I'm Bill Magwood. I'm Director General of the Nuclear Energy Agency. However, on March 11th, 2011, I was a commissioner with the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And the morning of the earthquake and tsunami, the word had spread about a disaster in Japan. And I rushed to my office and we put on the television there and we watched in horror as we saw images of the results of the tsunami sweeping across northern Japan. It was really quite a very disturbing thing to see. I have many friends in Japan, and I tried to reach some of them. It was difficult to reach a lot of people, as many of you recall. So I was really worried about this on a very human level initially. And as we started to watch the results of the tsunami, we started to hear something about a place called Fukushima. And it wasn't a plant I was familiar with, but we did hear that there was some issue, that the plant had been struck by the tsunami, but that everything was under control. And that was the first thing we heard. However, as the day progressed, we started to get more and more information. And by the end of that day in the United States, it was clear that the situation was quite serious. And when I woke the next morning, I had heard about the hydrogen explosions and realized that we were in a full-blown nuclear accident. And so it was really, in my professional career, the first time that we've been faced with a situation like this. And because we are very close to Japan in the US, particularly the nuclear community in the US is very close to that in Japan, we really felt that this was something that affected us directly. At that time, the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, activated its Emergency Response Center. We left it in place for about 9 weeks after the accident, so it was on for quite some time. As we tried to understand the severity of what was going on and understand how we could help. And as many of you recall, there was a very vigorous effort from the US government where I was at that time to respond to the event. And so we had people volunteering to go to Japan to help. We sent equipment and expertise. And I'm very proud of the response that we were able to provide. Fortunately, the worst situation did not happen. There were a lot of people who were very concerned of very dramatic consequences depending on which direction the wind might have shifted or whether the spent fuel pools were compromised. So lots of various scenarios were discussed. And we were watching all this very closely, trying to gather as much information as possible from our Japanese colleagues. And we really went through a very difficult week, as certainly everyone else did. During that week, I was able to finally reach some of my friends. I had some very close friends that were in Ibaraki, which is south of the accident where the tsunami struck hardest. And I was able to find out that they were doing well, although they didn't have water and electricity. It was a very, very tough time. But soon after, we began to focus mostly on the long-term aftermath. Once we became convinced that the immediate threat had been dealt with in Japan, we started to think about the long-term consequences and what that meant for nuclear energy around the world and in the United States. And the regulatory community came together internationally like never before. Places like the Nuclear Energy Agency, the international regulatory community came together and said in very clear terms that nuclear energy is safe. Nuclear power plants are safe. They're well operated, they're well designed, they're well regulated. And there was nothing that we saw in the accident that made us think differently about that. We did, however, learn that sometimes extreme events, the unexpected, we often talk about the 10,000-year design basis event. Well, the 10,000-year design basis event could happen next week. So we realized this, and this was a lesson learned that I think has been fully absorbed around the world. So nuclear facilities around the world are now much more resilient to the unexpected than they were before March 2011. There are systems and procedures and equipment that make nuclear facilities far more resilient to the unexpected, far more robust than they had been in the past. And therefore, if another extreme event takes place, nuclear facilities in NEA countries are better prepared to deal with them. And even in Japan, we saw other nuclear facilities which were hit by very similar tsunamis, survive the event and not have a severe accident because they had extra precautions taken in the case of a tsunami. So this showed that we can prepare for these things, that these are not beyond human ability to prepare. We simply have to make sure that we are prepared. And I think today, around the world, we are. This has, from a regulatory standpoint, had very significant ramifications. And I think as I reflect on what's happened over the last 10 years, the biggest change has been really in the way we think about the possibility of a severe accident. In the past, severe accidents were beyond design basis, which meant that we didn't really think about them very seriously as a licensing basis. It was something that was beyond the license. That bright line which used to exist is now quite blurry, and there's more preparation for those types of events than in the past. I think that's good for safety, but it also creates some challenges. Globally, I think the biggest difference is the public perception in some countries has certainly been impacted by the accident. And it is going to take a long time before the public fully accepts that these types of accidents can be dealt with, can be mitigated, can be prevented. And I certainly believe that as new technologies come forward, that they will give even more confidence to the public and policymakers that nuclear energy can be applied safely, even under the most extreme circumstances. And so small reactors, advanced reactors are now coming to the fore that I believe will give that assurance. In that respect, certainly the Japanese nuclear sector has over the years been one of the most advanced sectors in the world. And their contributions to this new generation of nuclear facilities, these new technologies that deal with the unexpected, will be very important. The expertise, the dedication, the attention to detail the Japanese industry and researchers bring to the work, it's a global asset. And I firmly hope that they will be very active in helping to move nuclear energy into this next 100 years. Because when we look at the numbers associated with dealing with climate change, it seems quite clear to me and many other people, many other analysts around the world, that if we don't have a vigorous role for nuclear energy in this next generation of energy facilities around the world, that we will not succeed in dealing with climate change. We will not be able to decarbonize our electricity system successfully and economically, and we will fail. So it isn't just simply something that has to happen for the nuclear sector. It's really important for the world and important for our societies to show that we can apply technology, advanced technology, to solve the world's problems. And I believe that the participation of Japan in this enterprise will be very important. So I certainly look forward to working with my colleagues in Japanese research organizations and industry to find how to apply this next generation. So we have learned a lot in the last 10 years. We have applied these lessons, and the world is a better place because of the lessons that have been applied from the tragedy of Fukushima Daiichi. Final thing I would say is that we all participated in a nuclear enterprise that did not foresee extreme events compromising nuclear facilities. So I think that we all owe some responsibility to what happened at Fukushima Prefecture. And therefore, the world community, the NEA, the IAEA, our colleagues in Vienna, and others around the world bear a responsibility to support Japan, support the people of Fukushima Prefecture as they continue to recover. And I personally will continue to do that and continue to support them as much as I can. So as this 10 years passes, it is 10 years that has been well spent. We have applied the lessons. We have not forgotten the people of Fukushima Prefecture. And as we go into the future, we will not forget in the long term either. Thank you very much.